Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Islamic Economics series. Today, we're diving deep into some really core principles that could, and I mean really could, shape the entire future of this discipline. So let's just jump right in with the big question, the one that's been on everyone's mind for decades. After all this time, all this scholarship, why is it that Islamic economics still kind of struggles to be seen as its own independent discipline? It's a huge question, right? And today, we're not just going to ask it, we're going to explore a really comprehensive proposal to answer it. You see, that big question really points to a need for some serious foundational work. So here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at the challenge itself. Then we'll critique the approaches we've been using so far. After that, we'll get into the proposed solution, something called Usul al Iqtisad. We'll look at its blueprint for development. And finally, we'll unpack the new methodological engine that makes it all tick. All right, let's start with Section 1, the disciplinary challenge. So when scholars talk about discipline independence, what are they really getting at? Let's unpack that. Okay, so think about it. What makes any field, chemistry, sociology, whatever, a real standalone discipline? Well, it usually comes down to these four things. You've got to have a clear subject matter, what you're studying. You need a solid body of knowledge built up over time. You need a way to test your theories, a methodology. And finally, you need a way for the fields to actually grow and evolve. The core argument here, the real challenge, is that many feel Islamic economics hasn't fully nailed down all four of these pillars just yet. So that brings us to our next section, critiquing current approaches. If progress has stalled, we've got to ask why. Well, if you look closely, it seems to come down to two main approaches that, just haven't been enough to build a truly independent intellectual tradition. Okay, so the first issue is what's called the fiqh-centric approach. Now, this is super important, don't get me wrong. It's all about applying Islamic legal rules, fiqh, to see if something is permissible or not. But the problem is it can turn Islamic economics into a bit of a checklist. Is this product halal? Is this contract haram? It focuses so much on the legal side of existing secular systems that it doesn't always step back and ask the bigger questions, like, should this system exist in the first place? It's more about validating what's there rather than building something new from the ground up. And that leads us to the second big problem, this idea of Islamization of conventional economics. What happens here is we take the standard neoclassical economic models, with all their built-in assumptions about rational man and maximizing profit, and we just try to put an Islamic label on them. It's like taking a conventional building and just painting a dome on top. The problem is you're not questioning the foundation of that building. You're not challenging the secular, often materialistic worldview that's baked right into those models. And this has a huge consequence. The scholar Al-Attas put it perfectly. He said this process gives Islamic economics a neoclassical guise. It looks Islamic on the outside because we've swapped out some words, but underneath, it's still running on the same old conventional engine. It's just relabeling, not a real fundamental change. So, if those are the problems, what's the solution? Well, this brings us to a really powerful idea, a whole new foundational methodology called Usul al Iqtisad. And this isn't just another small tweak. No, this is a call to rebuild the entire discipline right from its foundations, from the ground up. The name itself tells you everything. Usul al Iqtisad literally means the roots of economics. And that's the whole point. Instead of borrowing or adapting from other frameworks, the idea is to go right back to the philosophical roots of the Islamic worldview itself. We're talking about its ontology, what we believe about reality, its epistemology, how we know what we know, and its axiology, what we value. It's about building everything on that solid ground. So, how does it work? Well, it operates on three levels that are all connected. First, you have the normative part. This is where we ask, what should be? What's the ideal based on our worldview? Then you have the positive part. This is where we look at reality and ask what's actually happening in the world. And here's the kicker. The third part is the transformative dimension. This is the bridge. It asks, how do we get from what is to what should be? It's not just about describing things. It's about changing them for the better. It's a complete, goal-oriented system. And this isn't just a vague idea. Nope. It comes with a very clear, structured three-stage process. It's a real blueprint for how to build the discipline. Let's take a look.
Okay, so here's the roadmap. You start at stage 1, which is all about establishing the foundations, the deep stuff, the worldview, the core values. Once you have that solid base, you move to stage 2. This is where you build the intellectual toolkit, right? You develop the philosophy, the key terms, the specific methodology you're going to use. And only then, once all that is in place, do you get to stage 3, constructing the discipline itself. This is where you get your defined subject matter, your theories, and that whole body of knowledge we talked about earlier. It's a logical progression.
And the logic here is just so important. By following these stages, you ensure that everything you build is genuinely coming from Islamic first principles. It makes all the difference. You're not just decorating a foreign building. You are building your own, from the foundation up, brick by brick. It's a process of organic creation.
Okay, so we have this amazing blueprint, but what's the engine that powers this whole process? Well, this is where we get to the core of it all, a new methodological engine. And it's all grounded in the principle of tawhid, the oneness of God, which logically leads to the unity of all knowledge.
Now, this is a real game changer. Most conventional science creates a hard line between facts and values, but the Tawhidic methodology says, no, wait a minute. It integrates 3 sources of knowledge. You have divine revelation, the Quran and Sunnah. You have intellectual reason, logic and coherence. And you have factual observation, studying the world around us. The key word is integration. They aren't seen as separate or conflicting. They're all seen as different windows looking out onto the same single ultimate reality.
So that's great in principle, but how does it work in practice? I mean, a key part of any methodology is how you actually judge a theory. How do you know if it's a good one or not within this framework?
Well, it proposes 2 key tests for any theory. First, there's internal integrity. This is about consistency. Does the theory line up with revelation? Is it logically sound? And does it match up with what we see in the real world? It has to take all 3 boxes. But it doesn't stop there. The second test is even bigger, relational unity. This means a good theory doesn't just have to be consistent. It has to actively unify all these things. It has to build that bridge between our ideals and reality, between our values and the facts on the ground. It has to bring it all together. So, when you put it all together, this Usul al Iqtisad framework is, well, it's huge. It's a deep critique of where we are now, but it's also a super detailed roadmap for where we could go. And that leaves us with one final, massive question to think about. Could this be the blueprint for the next generation of truly authentic Islamic economic thought? See you in the next one. Subscribe, like, and comment.